Welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of A Story Club, Global Politics and Cultures, brought to you by Bulletproof Podcast Formula. My name is Dr. Kirk Megu, and I'm the Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress, the official opposition party in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This is a unique venture, streaming simultaneously from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean, from Dehra Dun in India, and San Francisco in the United States. We speak with people around the world, trying to understand different issues and problems relevant to my own country, Trinidad and Tobago, and also to people in sometimes very similar and sometimes very different situations, culture, history, politics, sociology, etc. The goal is to learn from each other, to build networks, to widen our perspectives, and to work for solutions in our distinctive contexts. Today's episode is titled Culture Industry and Digital Technology, from Rihanna, Megadeth, and Mariah Carey to Trinidad Carnival and beyond. The global culture industry is one of the world's most lucrative. Some of the world's largest and most powerful companies operate in this sphere, and it even forms part of a country's geopolitical soft power. At the same time, because it's based on individual human creativity and not natural resources, wealth, or size, there are unique opportunities for outsider individuals, small countries, marginal groups, or otherwise relatively powerless people to participate and succeed in this industry. Digital technology as well, although deployed by the most powerful corporations in the world in their massive corporate businesses, also provides a way for individuals, small and marginal populations, and even countries to participate in the very center. The culture industry has been deeply affected by the lockdowns following the COVID-19 outbreak and has made digital technology even more important. In some ways, this may even have leveled the playing field somewhat and put the largest and smallest producers of culture on a more equal footing. This week, I'm joined by two guests who have fascinating stories and projects in the global culture industry and insights to share. Akim Millington is part of the Grammy Award-winning Seek Virtual Reality founding team. He's also a former New Orleans Saint from the NFL, offensive lineman, and a Big 12 champion. Seek VR pioneered virtual reality technology and entertainment. They've worked with the biggest stars in the music industry, from Bon Jovi to Rihanna to Megadeth to Ziggy Marley, Mariah Carey, etc. Rubadiri Victor is president at the Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago, and he's the lead creative industry and cultural sector representative organization in Trinidad and Tobago. He's also a multimedia artist in film, music, painting, theater, mass, photography, writing, publishing, and curating design. But welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, thanks. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you guys here. Let's start off by you telling our audience a bit more about your background and how you got involved in culture as an industry, as well as perhaps practitioner as well. Let's start off with Akim and then Rubadiri. Akim.
Yeah. Hi. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Basically, like this, long story short, I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, Carenage to be exact. Came to the States in '96 when I was 12 years old for a better life, and started playing sports at a young age. Played baseball back in Trinidad. I played cricket, of course, football, and who could ever forget going out and fishing and all that.
The real football, you mean? With
real
foot.
Come to the States, got American football. Yeah. But yeah, so I came to the States. I lived over in Florida, Miami briefly, and then I moved to Chicago. When I got to Chicago, I started playing American football, and skill with hard work and just determination. Waking up 5 a.m, staying, being the first one in the gym, last out. Very cliche, but you have to put in the work. And by my senior year, I was blessed to be an All-American. I had numerous offers to just about every Division I program, had, a couple of the Ivy League schools, Yale, Dartmouth, Princeton to be exact. And yeah, I thought at a young age, I definitely want to make something of myself. My grandfather, he was a sailor, so he always told me about places like Hong Kong, Switzerland, especially being back in Trinidad, you're watching it on TV and you're hearing him firsthand accounts. So when I came here to the States, I definitely had that instilled upon me, the hard work, the ethic. And being from a fishing village in Carenage there in Scorpion, I mean, you definitely have to go out and mend the nets, pull in the nets, so the hard work and that mentality was definitely instilled upon a young age. Fast forward, went to University of Oklahoma, transferred to the University of Illinois, finished up as a captain with the Rose Bowl team there. And I went on and played for the New Orleans Saints, the NFL. I broke my back, however. I was attacked, suffered a broken back. If I get hit, I get paralyzed. So, the doctors, when it was time, they gave me a choice. Do you want to keep playing and risk paralysis and injury, or do you want to move on and use your brain, right? So, not to say we didn't use our brain in football, but this was more of a business decision, right? So, yeah, after football, I got into healthcare, right? Because of my situation, I took an in-depth, deep dive analysis in my life. What do I need to do? What changes do I need to make moving forward? I lost 100 pounds since I retired. I was 335, 340 pounds. I'm down to 240, 230 right now. So I've done that, changed up my eating habits, my diet. And like I said, I was in pharmaceuticals. I was a pharmaceutical rep, and I saw a problem, right? I had the rural areas. I was in the state of Texas, and I would drive out and I would see the rural patients and I'd speak to their doctors, and we'd have a problem in regards to how do we monitor individuals once they leave the facility, and more importantly, how do we monitor individuals in terms of a 24-hour cycle that's in rural parts. So that's when I turned my brain on, and I started a company, Senti Athletics, focusing on basically telemedicine and wearable development. And
that's kind of a huge leap that I want you to kind of, because I mean, you're a salesman or whatever, and then you have a technology company. I mean, that's not usual. I mean, how do you make that leap? And I mean, did you have a background in technology or what?
No. Okay. So great question. So I went to school. I went to University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. I graduated with a bachelor's in sociology and a focus in history. And I went back to school to be a therapist / guidance counselor. So my major was more in I would say I was focusing more on the Freudism, the ego. So I know what people like, how to play on that. And when I initially, I was approached in regards to the watch by my partner at the time, and he's like, hey, you have a background in sports, we want to bring you together. And I said, great. However, I see this need right now in healthcare. And we basically took the watch. I had my engineers go, we break it down and we re-engineered it, and we have it for where it was. It had the capabilities to where it can monitor your vitals, and you just basically put a SIM card in there, and you can FaceTime.
What year was that? This is before Apple Watch came out, right?
This was before the Apple Watch. Yeah, this was probably in 2014, I want to say. So we had some really good traction, but that was one of the biggest fears by everyone. It's, hey, we don't want to sign you guys too soon. And then Apple comes out, and it's like a whole different, because you have the loyal Apple bed, the loyal Apple customer. But we had great traction. I had a really strong connection with someone in the healthcare industry, and we were able to actually get clinical trials done for this watch, and we're proceeding. Let me just try to face up. Sure. It's a little hot over here by us. We had really good traction in that. However, I wanted to take it more in the healthcare route. My partner wanted to go on more in the entertainment. So we didn't really agree on that end. I moved and relocated from Texas to Miami, Florida, and that's when I met Miss Mary Spio. And I was introduced to her from Ron Millington, actually, my cousin, and he had met her through some friends, and he's like, hey, you're in tech, and you have a knack for this, and there's this person out here, and she has an invention and she's very smart. You guys should talk. So we sat down and we spoke, and we're like, man, our paths, I would say, and our vision for technology and using it as a driving tool for education, especially within your third world countries as a whole, or your developing countries. How can we utilize that to be in the forefront and the precipice of education? And that's where we had a lot in terms of the vision. Alongside education, we also focused on entertainment as well. Miss Spia, her background is very instilled within the VR industry, within the tech industry as a whole. She was the person, she's the reason that we stream, right? She invented streaming.
Oh,
So
really?
there's no more Blockbuster because of her.
Right,
So, right. She invented streaming. I mean, she's one of the top people, if not the top people in virtual reality from what she's done. I mean, she has 4D headphones to where it's the world's first 4D headphones. You put these headphones on, you feel as if, the helicopter's flying from right to left. And with the shooting games, you could shoot through the walls and you could tell the difference between a cement wall, a wood wall, shooting through, glass. So we utilize a lot of these technologies. Yes, they initially were made for gaming and entertainment, but we repurpose them for education and for healthcare, right? Everyone could go and create a game to go kill people, but how do you create a game to learn? How do you create a game to put positivity out there, to teach? So that was really our focus.
Right. So it's
like
kind
I
of
said,
like you got in. So your entry is really through the technology field, and you just sort of because of your connection got into the entertainment. So in terms of that, like, is some of the big stars, which I know people would love to, hear about, like, I mean, some of the biggest stars, I guess, Mariah Carey, Megadeth on the rock side. You got the Grammy for Megadeth, for the Megadeth.
We got a Grammy, 2017 Grammy for Best Metal Performance for Megadeth's Dystopia VR. That was the first of its kind, to where we're able to package it to where it'll fit. The VR headset itself will fit within the actual content, the CD box, and it'll fit there on the shelf. They're able to go to the Best Buy, buy the piece of content, and then take out the DVD or take out the CD, listen to that at home, and then from there they're also able to download the app to their phone, put it on their head, and they feel like they're at a live concert. And we were the first to actually pioneer this in the world. It's sold out, I want to say, worldwide in like 2 weeks. Megadeth came in number 3 behind Adele and Justin Bieber. This was when Adele was singing the Hello song. This is, I mean,
that's
to
big,
have
when she was blowing up all over the world.
So to have a rock
something I would personally be interested in, I think many of our listeners and viewers, like how does that happen? Like all of a sudden you're put in touch. Is it because you got some arrangement with I don't know, record company like Warner Brothers or whatever, or an agency, a representative agency, or is it like legwork you did to kind of go out and reach out to these people individually?
I would say it's a little bit of both. Well, we have to backtrack a little bit, right? Like I said, Mary Spio, she is, I mean, you say her name, everyone knows who that is within the industry. And at the time, when we developed and came out with the product, it was, even now there's a transition that's happening to where the assets are going to more digital and less physical. So how do you keep, your hardcore fans excited, keep them coming back to the shelf? And this product that we have with Seek, we're the very first in the world. We're the only ones in the world that have the actual patent to create and to brand cardboard content and within the packaging. I mean, this was the final product right here. To where you have the AR capabilities, augmented reality, and then you have the VR. And this is, patented and patent issued as well. And that was a major driving force in terms of the industry working with us. Because I don't know if you remember, Sony had their content hacked a couple years back.
Yeah,
right?
I
So
remember.
in terms of rights management, vendor rights management, that extent on the legality side, these organizations are multi-billion dollar companies. So once they partner with you, they expect a certain level of trust, first and foremost, a certain level of security, and a certain level of protection with their content. So back from what Ms. Spio had developed in terms of, in the military, back in Boeing, with the digital streaming tech capabilities, they knew that if Boeing, multi-billion dollar company, would trust this amazing woman and her technology, then we could trust her as well. And that was the major issue, or I said that was the major driving force in having all these record labels, all these franchise legacy artists work with us, because they know that, okay, if Boeing could work with them, and if Boeing can trust her and her technology, and as well as Warner Music and Universal, et cetera, then we can as well. And that was the biggest thing, because no artist wants to get their content hacked and they wake up and half their albums already released in another half of the world, and it's just a mess for everyone.
Yeah,
so that was the major driving force, having the patent to monetize their content, put it on the shelf, as well as distribute it towards all the platforms, and at the same time guaranteeing that it's secure, it wouldn't get hacked. So those are the factors that just made us, in a sense,
yeah.
the de facto to come to.
Good,
But
good.
on the flip side as well, prior to here, Miss Spio, she's worked with, like, for instance, the, Will Smiths and the Mary J. Blige. So, they knew working with us, we're going to be at a certain caliber, and we're going to match their caliber and match their expectation. As well
Excellent.
as,
Let me just interrupt here, because
yeah,
we had some problems, some technical problems bringing Rubadiri in. So now they're fixed. So let's bring him in the conversation now. Welcome, Rubadiri. So here we have a fellow Trini who's gone on to the center, and you are working in the very rich cultural soil of Trinidad and Tobago here, trying to develop it. You have a very interesting story, mission, and background. Why don't you give our global audience a sense of that?
Well, Kirk, let me first tell you that you actually have two Karanaj boys in this feed. So that's really an amazing.
Yeah.
Right. So let me big up Karanaj and the West Coast.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Fishing village for life.
Scorpion
So that's first of all, that's a real amazing coincidence there.
It's the hard work. It's the hard work.
Yeah. So okay. I'm a multimedia artist. I work in 8 mediums, and I'm the president of the Artists Coalition, which is the umbrella body for the creative industries. We represent the macro industrial interests of the sector. I became an artist the way that I suppose all artists became artists. We were compelled. You're compelled. You find yourself doing, sketching in the margins, writing stuff. My 2 parents are incredible storytellers. I was around a lot of creativity. For all kinds of reasons. And for all kinds of reasons, I found myself in, being multimedia. I paint, music, full gamut of stuff. The way that I learned my craft was to apprentice with elders and masters. It's the way that in my reading of the immortal round of creativity, the way that it should be done, the immortal way. And that's what I pursued. So I went after doing that in the 8 mediums that I did. And it was a philosophical as well as a craft-based initiation.
Can I just interrupt and ask you to expand on something? Just as you are in the diverse, medium of artistic expression and so forth, could you give the global audience a sense of the diversity of the cultural complex that we have in Trinidad and Tobago that you are also part of?
Right. So Trinidad and Tobago is a nation of now 1.4 million people. It's the most southerly island of the Caribbean, right off 9 miles off the coast of Venezuela. We are a multi-ethnic nation, as most claims of first native genocide, then plantation slavery, and in our case, East Indian indentureship, as well as Chinese indentureship. So it's and a small landmass like us, with the amount of multi-ethnicity, you could actually say Trinidad is, in the West being the first modern, is the modern world, is the beginning of the modern world. But Trinidad in a real sense is the beginning of what we understand to be modernity in terms of globalized populations and all of those things. We had the main tribes of the world here present and accounted for more than 100 and something years, dealing with issues of capitalism at ground zero, when capitalism was a human life is also material for trade, you know? And so we have been dealing with issues of modernity for the longest while as a nation, in terms of resistance to, you know, all the different things of white supremacy, global capitalism at its most violent and virulent, and all of those things. And so have created a culture kind of born out of that resistance, and also born out of this multi-ethnic kind of hodgepodge, which is phenomenal. And so what it has bred, all of this has bred in Trinidad, is, as a student of history, probably Bali kind of comes kind of close, but almost unprecedented in terms of the richness on the ground, in terms of cultural production, in terms of kind of native genius, in terms of artifacts being produced per square inch, per population base, per GDP, the amount of folk idioms and stuff that we've created, the amount of things that are created, like just on a per capita on a weekly basis, is stupendous. And you're talking about a country, for instance, there's one New Orleans Carnival, one Venice Carnival, one Brazil Carnival, but there are 300 Trinidad-style carnivals on planet Earth. The two largest street festivals in the Western world are Trinidad-style carnivals, and that's Brooklyn Labor Day and Notting Hill Carnival. At their height, you're talking about 4 million people on the streets. Now, if 3 Black people get together on the streets in both of those metropoles, it calls for police action. It's like, oh, we have 3 of them on the corner of Bleecker and whatever. We have 4 million on the streets and they can't do anything about it. They have to negotiate with the festival. And that wasn't done by public or private sector. There was no public or public-private sector, interventions. We talk about that in Trinidad. There's no conscientious public or private sector intelligence working behind these things. This is all the people. This is all the energy of the people. And that,
and just to expand on that too, so we have our creativity of making new things, and then we also have our ancestral traditions. So so you'll find Yoruba traditions, and then we have our syncretic Afro-Christian, spiritual Baptist. So they'll have their seasons of mourning, and then you'll have like Muharram, right? We call it Hosei here, but you have the Islamic Shia festivals, and then you have the Hindu festivals, and then you have the Emancipation we have coming up, which is a whole celebration, which is also global.
And those things,
and we have Corpus Christi, which hardly any. This is our thing all the time.
These are the things that make Trinidad. So the reason why we have 300 Trinidad-style carnivals, this is my historical theories, is that all the festival tribes of the nations, of the tribes of the world came to Trinidad. So we got the Yoruba, Congo, Ashanti, Fulani, the West Coast, Gold Coast of Africa. That's the festival seat of Africa. East Indians of Bengal and Bihar come here. If they had gone 2 villages over, they would have gotten a completely different stuff, but we got the ones who doing 1 million people in the streets for Ganga festivals and Ganesh festivals and those kinds of things. We were the seat of the Warao and Kalinago peoples, the original news. This is where they used to come and consecrate their priests, their caciques. Naparima, Bola, Ripo, El Takush, those mountains are godheads for the entire, from Cuba to the coast of
where the first
South
man
America
was created, according to them.
So I mean,
right here.
You have all these people coming together, and so when they do their thing, they see in the others. When like a 30-foot effigy is going up for Ram Leela, Hindu Ram Leela, the Africans, but I know that when they hear the drums, it's like I know that. When the East Indians hear the Orisha drums and they see the acts of possession and they see the masking, it's like, I know that, you know, and so, you know, within 20 years of East Indians arriving, they were already Jose Tajas and Hindu Murtis inside the carnival. You know what I mean? They were on the streets in the post-emancipation Africanized carnival. So it's a phenomenal place, and it has bred a pantheon of heroes across the planet that most of the people don't know that pantheon is Trinidad. So from the three kind of goddesses of hip hop, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, Foxy Brown, these are all Trinidadian, these are all Trinbagonian women, you know? And as the Jamet, if anybody understands Trinidad and Trinidad Carnival and the persona, they represent that Jamet energy and stuff. You will understand the three of them and immediately. I mean, if you understand Trinidad and those things, you know, and but the link from that to Jeffrey Holder, Billy Ocean, Romany Malcolm, Wilson Duke, V.S. Naipaul, Horace Ovey, the first Black director in Britain and Europe, film director, the fathers of Pan-Africanism, you know, all of those people, that's Trinidad.
And Walcott,
the mother of dance in China, of modern dance in China, Dai Alien, is a Trinidadian, born a couple in the same decade as Pearl Primus, the mother of African dance in America. So, you know, I mean, so it's a phenomenal pantheon. And
let me just add this one thing. So with all of that, I mean, what I find very interesting and important about your work, it's really your life's work, as part of your other things as well, is that we have this richness, but it hasn't been, let's say, monetized, which is kind of, you know, from an artistic point of view, that is a bit of a blasphemous way to think of it only in terms of money or whatever. But still, in terms of business and whatnot, we have not capitalized on it in that way. And I know that you've dedicated so much of your activism to systematizing it, because a lot of this thing is just done instinctively and then it dies. And there's so many things we've lost. And I know this is a concern of yours.
To give the audience a context, the creative industries is the second largest industry on planet Earth, right? It's 2.2 trillion. This is 2010 figures, right? 2.2 trillion, this UNESCO figures 2010 annually. It has blown away the extractive industries and the manufacturing industries a long time ago. The last two decades, it has, from orphan economy, it is now the second largest economy on the planet. And it is the gateway to the new service industry type of economies that the world is set up. It has provided the second wave for the digital technology. So the creative industries are the gateway drug and the adapter for the technology that is used for the technology. And so that's the power of the creative industries. Now, if you don't have the enabling environment in place, the environment of legislation, policy, institution, fiscal enablers, those kinds of things, you can't partake in that economy. You can't monetize the talent that you have on the ground. And that's why we created the Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago 20 years ago, because we had governments that were not just analog governments, but these governments were 19th century in their conception of the economy and their conception of the kinds of policies and industries that work and all of those kinds of things. And they had decimated a lot of the creativity and culture and traditional cultures of the past generations. And we were looking at an issue where we were entering at a period at the turn of the 2000s where 65% of the population was 35 and under. It was a huge population of young people. And the entire golden age generation, our golden age generation from 1930 to 1956, an extraordinary period of cultural global growth of Trinidad's impact on the planet culturally and those kinds of things, and creation of indigenous forms, that generation was dying. And if we did not create institutions of matriculation, institutions of memory and those kinds of things, we were looking at the decimation of entire traditional forms. We had documented 144 traditions, in fact, that were in clear and present danger of being destroyed because they were in two elders' heads. And we had to create solutions to get that stuff out of their heads into forms where they could be transmitted. And that's where digital technology came in and those kinds of things. So so my entry point, first of all, was as an artist. By sitting at the feet of all these elders for almost a decade and a half, I learned all the issues with as I was learning my craft, all the issues that were going on, and was wondering like, but why, how come there are no solutions? How come we haven't been able to impact government and those kinds of things? And I also saw the flaws in the way that it was being prosecuted. So I created the organization. We started doing policy documents. We hired lawyers, we hired accountants, architects, we did feasibilities, we started talking policy language. We started compiling our own statistics and those kinds of things and data on the sector. And also mobilizing people in the streets at the flip side of that. And began to get a different idea of the creative industries. So much so that right now, nearly every single policy that exists for the sector that exists because we compel them to exist. We leverage those things to exist. So film industry exists because we made it happen. The National Trust that protects heritage and those kind of things exist because we made it happen. The grants are more transparent and those kinds of things because we made those things happen. There's a national cultural policy on, all of those things exist because we compel them. Yet still, we had our success ratio is about 5%. And most trade unions and NGOs would tell us, "Well, that's excellent." That you don't want to live yourself in a 5% quartile, success quartile, but that's what it is. So we have kind of shifted in terms of our emphasis as we were set up to be 24/7, 365 lobbying, right? That's how, and the victories that we have won over the last 20 years were because we were set up in that way. And we think we've exhausted every legal thing that you could do to move the political directorate. And where we are now is we have retooled the NGO to be, what we're doing now is creating best practice, international best practice solutions with private and international partners and modeling the best practice. So people say, this is what we were talking about all the time. This is it. This is what this thing looks like. And the project that we have going on right now, the July generation, which we'll come to, that is one of those things. It's a project to take Trinidad and Tobago pop culture globally. We are sending out packages, curated packages of Trinidad and Tobago pop culture for 18 weeks from July to October. 150 plus tastemakers, global tastemakers get these packages of 24 songs, films, short films, all kinds of different kinds of Trinidad pop culture material. And the tissue that connects it is that story, which we have never told globally, that connects the dots between the Nicki Minaj and the Winston Duke and the C.L.R. James and the V.S. Naipaul and the Jeffrey Holders and the first black man in the House of Lords and the first black Tony Award winners and the first black Mr. Olympia, first black Miss Universe. I mean, all that is a country of 1.4 million people. It's a kind of ridiculous but we have not
I'm
prosecuted that brand like how Jamaica prosecutes its brand internationally. So that, if you see a Usain Bolt, you link Usain, Bob Marley, Bounty Killer, weed. You link all of those things together. We haven't been that good.
Let me bring Akeem back into the conversation as well. Now, what I wanted to ask you next was really about how COVID now has impacted the sector. But there are some things that I'd like you to comment on, Akeem, from Rubadiri, especially being Trinidadian, Carnage too. But which is that so in the environment we're operating here, and this may be interesting for the global audience. It is very government dominated, and so policy, so influencing government becomes very important. Whereas you are operating in an environment where it's highly commercialized. Now there are government incentives, and that's why you're in Oklahoma right now, and you moved from California, from LA to Oklahoma, like Elon Musk and whatnot. So there is the government thing behind the scenes that maybe people don't realize, but here it's very sort of so the environment is different. So it's NGOs and whereas you're dealing with billion-dollar corporations, and so that environment. So because you have a sense of both, it would be interesting just to hear your little comment on that. But I do want to ask both of you how the COVID crisis and lockdown has affected you guys personally. We know around the world it's, the cinema industry, for example, is almost dead. I mean, it's moved now streaming and all that kind of stuff. But it'd be interesting to hear how you all see it affecting you personally. But yeah, so Akim, I think you're on mute, so unmute yourself, please. Yeah, you're still on. Right.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, great question, by the way. Oh my gosh, COVID, my goodness. So so I was in California when COVID first hit. My grandfather passed away back in Trinity. He had a stroke. So I flew back to Trinity was to bury him. And upon coming back to the States, my father died. So I dealt with, that right away. I couldn't return and all that. But when I flew back to the States, that was at the time to when they were locking down the airport. So I was actually one of the last planes in from Houston, Texas, to actually get back to California. And, when I was back in Trinity, it really didn't hit that much because it was still very new. And we're dealing with the death of my grandfather. Then when I come back to the States, it's like, okay, everyone's wearing their mask. Things are getting more and more, virulent. It's very deadly, highly infectious disease. So, okay, this is serious. We went from a 2-week lockdown to a month lockdown. After about a month and a half is when you started to see, okay, you have employees. You also have overhead. You have dates that are booked up. You have cart payments. You have, you're running a company, so you're going to have expenses. And that's when, as a business owner, it's like, okay, at what point do you take a step back and say, all right, I have 6 to 8 month runway. I'm going to just save all that money, all that overhead, and pay my employees because we should be back in business in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, right? Versus, hey, we're going to let everyone go. And for the betterment of the company, let's save money, let everyone go, and let's see how the chips fall. So, we saw it firsthand where we had employees, we had, studio time, we had stuff booked, and no one wanted to come because, we had the COVID. The artists and the talent wouldn't leave their homes. Everyone is, concerned about traveling, which is understandable. But then as a business person, you're thinking, okay, what is best for the company? So it was a tough decision, but we closed down that operation on that side. I mean, we have offices in Miami, Chicago, and London, the UK. So at the time, we had to just close it down briefly. And then I took a step back myself and said, okay, what's the next best move? Do I go back to Miami? Do I go to the UK? I mean, I couldn't even travel the country at this time. So I was just thinking, let me go to Oklahoma. Elon, like you mentioned earlier, Elon Musk sold all 5 of his houses in California and moved to the state next door to Texas, right? So he has a huge, mansion over there. He has a manufacturing plant for his Teslas, for his cars, that was initially here in Oklahoma, but he brought it to Houston. So I was like, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right, as they say. So I left Cali, came to Oklahoma. As you had mentioned and touched on briefly, they are giving a lot of incentives, a lot of tax breaks for the rural areas. So, whereas in the rest of the states, you can get acres here for a third of the price. I don't want to get specific with the numbers, but it's very beneficial to have a company here, especially in manufacturing. And with what I'm doing now with the pros to pros and the training, the mental aptitude, there's a lot of athletes, a lot of military that'll be utilizing this. So that was one of the main purposes of coming out here. But to go back to what you were saying, even in this state as Oklahoma, not all the states closed down. So similar to where not all the nations closed down, there's 50 states out here. And you would go from one state that's closed down, like myself in California, to where people are struggling. It's already expensive. The homeless situation is already there. So you already have those adverse situations. And then you bring on this COVID to where you're telling everyone stay inside, money's tight, they feel the pressure. Come to a state like Oklahoma, it's night and day, and you can breathe. It's very refreshing, and it's like, okay, I can see why, individuals are moving and relocating. We had back in the 1920s, it was the Great Migration, I believe, where you had, heavy populations.
Yeah.
For better jobs and that was due to the Industrial Revolution from the earlier on in the 20s and spotting out the jobs. Well, now I was reading and I saw to where the state of Florida reported that they received 33,000 New York driver's license.
Yeah.
In terms of they're switching that out for the Florida driver's license. So, eventually that state, with the influx of people, their housing rates are going to go up, jobs are going to be harder. So I think COVID, as much as, we're a whole in one America, we are at 50 different states, and it's kind of fragmented the country a little bit, to where some people are totally anti the lockdown, some offer the lockdowns. When you have ones that lived in a lockdown state like myself and saw it firsthand, I was in LA, downtown LA, to where I was right by the Staples Center. So I was getting it every single day, whether it's the new update, so. And even with that, we had protests going on as well, which was very interesting because you have COVID, but you're protesting, you're wearing the mask. Are you spreading it? So, it's just, it was a challenge. But on the flip side, everyone's inside. The products that we have, they're geared for inside use for the most part. Yeah, you can use it outside, but you have better Wi-Fi on the inside. So companies such as myself, who are geared to more towards the user that wants to use their product inside, they may want to utilize Wi-Fi as well, get a better experience. This actually helped us gain more traction. You have your services like Amazon, for instance, Walmart, Netflix. Everyone that's servicing the individual at home, they've definitely seen tremendous growth to their bottom line. So that's how we look at it. Yes, it's a negative thing, COVID, but how can you flip it and try to find the positive aspect from this situation? And that's, us, we specialize in streaming with the app. You have your educational aspect, you have the entertainment aspect. So we kind of focused on just making content for the individuals that's at home. So
that's really interesting. I've been doing, my podcast for a couple of years now and stuff, and the Zoom, and when the lockdown happened, it was amazing that all CNN and NBC had to do the same thing I'm doing, and it's and it looks, and now the Tonight Show and my show are, they're hardly any different, So it's amazing the way these things have been reconfigured. And I remember, I don't know if it was Bill Maher or somebody saying, it's really tough doing this. It's different than, to an audience. But it's interesting the way, so your technology, VR, I didn't think about that. It's servicing an individual. Now it's the opportunity. So, Rubidiri, in the Trinidad context, tell us about how COVID affected the culture industry here.
So people should know that by now that the performance side of the industries planet-wide, decimated. Anything that had to do with live performance indoors, especially large clusters of people, so things like theater, live music, from your small intimate clubs to your large stadium venues, anything to deal with any of those performance-related things, circuses. Cirque du Soleil went bankrupt. There are all kinds of things closed down. There were protests in the streets by musicians in Germany, England, and those kinds of things for packages, for care packages and that kind of stuff from their governments. It's serious. So that was much the same for Trinidad. The performance industries. Again, though, we know that the streaming services have taken off. So bottled content that existed before and content that could be streamed, whether it be from TikTok, your little TikTok things to larger things, those things have taken off. So, we had this thing where we were comparing the price of oil versus the price of Netflix shares. and the profit margins of the companies of those companies and those things, and it's chalk and cheese, Netflix shares of like skyrocketed, and their profit margins are, Disney has invested like, 20x in the next 2 years just for content for Disney Plus alone. Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars, all that stuff. I mean, and telling their shareholders, don't expect no profit. Don't expect no profit. But until the next 3-4 years, and then you could eat to your heart's content, because by then we would have 160 million subscribers. We would have surpassed Netflix, and we would be the big game in town. And this is the investment. And that's the kind of things that were happening. And so personally for me, we had a number of creative projects in the works. A number of them were heritage-based and destination-based. So they were tourist-based, working with local communities to ramp up their heritage sites with multimedia museums, digital tech, all those different kinds of things, into international best practice heritage sites and international destinations. Of course, with the decimation of the tourist industry, travel, all those kinds of things, all of those projects disappeared, right? So they postponed until whenever. Then I had 2 massive projects which had New York landfalls in summer 2020 and autumn 2020, right? This is like it was like, these were massive $1 million projects. Like these are, it's like, and you just like watching New York, like, oh my God, like, body bags, like going into trenches, and it's like, so those projects were wiped out completely. So for the first 2 months, I was like, like in limbo, like, it was like, what the, slowly though, people just started calling for all kinds of different things that I do, kind of within the zone of how things would be flipped into a digital space, asking, could you do this for us, or whatever. And those things kind of gave me the clue of how to pivot. And we were trying, of course, we were working with the sector, trying to talk to people about, you need to kind of shift this way, that way, and those kinds of things, but ourselves kind of trying to gauge it. Those first 4 months, I'm sure for everybody, even those who were in it, who think they have everything down and they know everything, and I'm sure for those first 4 months, everybody was like, what the hell? Because I might make this decision now based on this, but tomorrow, what does tomorrow look like? We made some calculations very early. In April, we knew that there would be no carnival, no Trinidad Carnival, and for the following year, right, February. So Carnival brings in between $650 million to $1.1 billion into the economy, right? It's one of the largest forex earners for the economy. And for the creators, of course, it is a bonanza, it's a boon for all the performers and mass makers, the artisans, all kinds of people. And it is a leap off from them into the 300 Trinidad style carnivals all over the planet. So whatever exists of a creative economy in Trinidad exists by dint of those 300 Trinidad style carnivals, right? So there are people who are worth $56 million annually, one musician in particular. And it's because of that carnival. He's able to travel those things and set up, he's able to set up economies in those things where he's able to. I'm talking Trinidad and Tobago dollars, of course. You divide by 6 for the US equivalent, right? But the thing is, we knew that there was not going to be any carnival. And so we started creating the idea of the virtual carnival. So by May, we had worked out 96 hours of programming, and a way that we would bring in that whole global diaspora of Trinidad and Tobago celebrity talent, the Nickies and the Winstons and all of like everybody all over the planet. And we had programmed stuff to time zones all over the planet. So like we knew when is it prime time in India, New Zealand, and Australia, when is it prime time in Latin America, when is it prime time on the West Coast and the East Coast, and we could program content, for those things. And we worked out the whole thing, and we worked out how do you transmogify traditional festival events into virtual content. that people will want to, that is magnetic virtual content that people want to consume. So we worked out all of this, and we will, we watched the things. London, Notting Hill was the pioneer for the virtual carnival. They were the first out of the gate. So we were in contact with them. We spoke with them, and what they did, what worked, what didn't work, how they pursued the different platforms that they worked on, when who they spoke to, when they spoke to IG, spoke to headquarters, IG headquarters, Facebook headquarters, those kinds of things. And so we figured out how, okay, we can't do this, we could do this, and those kinds of things. And we worked out all of that. Again, as you said, though, Trinidad and Tobago is different than in other spaces in that we are oil and gas economy, and the government is the main player in the oil and gas sector. 75% of our economy is oil and gas derived. So whoever holds those purse strings controls power and decision-making power and those kinds of things. So that's why politicians have this inordinate amount of power in Trinidad, because they control the flow of that money, and you don't want to get into the bad books or whatever, or to be shut out from 75% of the economy plus.
Yeah.
But it also means that the economies are smart or as dumb as the people who are in charge, and those things. And so the Prime Minister made a statement. He said, like, there will be no carnival, whatever. And we were like, okay, cool. And that same day, we made the announcement, but there's going to be a virtual carnival. And we started a national debate about the virtual carnival immediately. So people started to engage. We were on the news cycle, every 6 hours or so, just getting people, interested and thinking about it and that kind of stuff. 2 days later, the head of the NCC, the National Carnival Commission, says there will be no virtual carnival. And we were like, what the? It's like, why? What the, we were losing 55,000 visitors, right? That's the spend. That's where the spend comes from.
Yeah.
Right. At its height is 65,000. Our push was that we might be losing 55,000 visitors, but we could go after 55 million pairs of eyes.
Right.
That's the way that we should read. That's how we reconfigured the festival. And that's why we had planned the entire thing and that kind of stuff, and programmed the way that we had programmed, and the type of programming and the types of products. And more than that, we thought that the virtual carnival could be the leverage for Trinidad to enter the digital economy. So not just for the carnival people, but the entire creative industries, but also for other partners in the industry. The government created a Ministry of Digitalization. And we thought that this is a perfect runway for the Ministry of Digitalization to work with all the different industries to ramp up their back ends so that they could be able to take advantage of the digital economy. And that all of these players would be present and accounted for the virtual carnival. And so we did all these things. We proposed it. The national budget was in September. So we had enough time to engage in conversations and get them to understand, nothing, right?
Yeah.
No investment. No, they didn't take us on. They didn't whatever. And this was also part of a much larger things of interventions that we thought that were necessary in terms of legislation, policy, different kinds of ways that interventions that could have happened that kind of not only sustain the sector, but prepare parts of the sector to engage the virtual economy at the highest possible level. Because there are players here who are international market ready. Mm-hmm. And it was an opportunity to tool those people up to that stuff and get them to ramp in. And because the palette of the world was more diverse during this period than it ever was before, people were giving African content and South Asian content and Latin American content a chance. It's like, let me listen to this, or let me check out this movie, or let me look at, and Netflix and all of them were programming stuff as well. It was an opportunity for us to, gain the foothold. It didn't happen. The thing is that when we created the strategies, the virtual carnival was the first of a two-prong effort. The other part of it was called the July Generation, which is the project which we're running now. So the July generation, whereas the virtual carnival required government intervention because they control a lot of the stakeholders, and it's a capital intensive project. You know, it requires multiple shoots and the movement of persons and capital and things across, you know, space and time and that kind of stuff. The July generation is a virtual project. It is basically emails. You know, we are sending out emails to 150 plus people. There'll probably be 1,000 plus by the end of the 4 months. We think that this summer is the first post-pandemic summer for parts of the planet, the Western world, Europe, America, parts of Africa, parts of Asia. And it's going to be a summer of joy and excess. And people are going to be consuming pop culture in a particular way. And we should be part of that consumption cycle and be part of that playlist. And the idea was we had to get to the tastemakers, right? Rather than we try to, you know, the marketplace, the industrial marketplace is a hard nut to crack. You know, you require all kinds of different pieces of machinery but the tastemakers, the people who make those decisions, we need to get them to understand brand TNT and to link all those things in their head, like, wow, oh, Nikki, Cardi, Foxy, Fife Dog.
Yeah.
Whoa, who are these people? Like, and listen to this stuff, you know, like, you know, yeah, you know, rock and jazz and hip hop and all these styles of music coming out of Trinidad that not played in the radio here, but we play on our underground radio station, Indigenous, on radiotoku.com. That was a plug. Right, good. So tune in from next week Thursday, 9 to 11 every Thursday, radiotoku.com, another fishing village in Trinidad. And we went to Radio Toku actually because Toku is a community, a rural community, and we thought we will bypass all the mainstream big radio stations and those things and go to a grassroots community radio station that has a global outreach. I'm gonna have to stop you here because we're reaching the end of the hour. I mean, it's a fascinating conversation to have with both of you. Yeah, we need another one where we could really get into the brass tacks of all the things that we do. But I mean, let me give you an opportunity because we are in the last minute, just to, you know, a final thought for the audience about, you know, just on whatever you want to say for Akim and Rubidir. Let me invite Akim first. Okay.
I'd say in regards to just making strides coming from Trini, from Carnage here, NFL, you know, the Grammys, everything as a whole, right? I just see it, well, two things. My grandfather, he always says, he's telling me, always surround yourself with people that are better than you, because the worst they're gonna do is pull you up, never bring you down. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is, I always look at it, you know, what can I learn today that will make an impact tomorrow and that will last forever, right? Regardless of the situation that you're in, everyone goes through their jams, right? Everyone has adversity, but how are you gonna react once adversity hits? Like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. So how are you gonna react when adversity hits? And that's just the way I look at it, because you look at right now, we're going through a lot of adverse conditions, whether it's within the household, financially, you know, with the pandemic. So there's a lot of negative out there, but what can you focus on? And how can you make that last? So that's just it for anyone that's listening. Yeah. And you've definitely lived that with your NFL injury and turning it into this career, man. Oh yeah. Right. Oh yeah. Rubadiri, yourself. Oh, are you stuck? Oh no.
Yeah. What I would say the same as Akeem. Every position is a position of strength. You have to kind of go into your silence, listen to your intuition. Read the landscape and respond. You have to respond. You have to engage. Even if you fail in the first one, the universe is going to respond to your movement and your positive movement. The universe is going to provide the clue for the next thing. So keep moving, keep going back inside, checking, and then moving forward and move and do the work. To the creatives out there, keep doing the work. Take this time to go inside, to look at your catalogs, curate your catalogs, use this time to curate, figure out the things that could pivot out of that catalog into new ways and into new forms and those kinds of things. You might be surprised by something that you discarded in 1998 might be the thing that takes you to the next level now. So really, really have faith in your work. Go back in and do that stuff. And other than that, to the global audience, I will tell you that Trinidad and Tobago is next, right? Trinidad and Tobago is next in terms of global pop culture. Check out the July Generation on IG. We'll be starting to post all those things. We start posting this week. And so check it out on IG, on Twitter, on Facebook, the July Generation. Check it out. It is cutting edge Trinidad and Tobago pop cultural content. It's things that you never would have expected. These are the heirs to Van Halen and Black Sabbath in Trinidad and Tobago. The heirs to EDM. The next wave of EDM is coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. The next avant-garde Afrofuturist filmmakers are coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. The next hot animation and puppetry is coming out of here. And so, give it a chance and check it out. We are a magic country. We are a magic country. It's amazing the amount of impact that we've had on the world. 1.4 million people. It's ridiculous. They have nations going around the Olympic circle, and you hear them talking subcontinents, yet still to win a medal. They're trying their best and stuff. Trinidad has like 20-something medals, golds, and all that kind of stuff. And we just be vexed when people get silver and thing. What's wrong with he? How we? It's like, why? Because our expectations are so ridiculous. In the smallest nations.
Imagine Keyshawn Walcott won gold in javelin. What javelin tradition do we have?
Two boys from a small fishing village on the North Coast.
Amazing. But anyways, I want to thank you so much, both of you, for this fascinating and interesting discussion. It's really been a pleasure to have you on the program.
Same. Have a blessed day. Thank you again. I appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you as well, too, Ruby.
I think he's stuck.
Yes.
All right. Okay, good. Back.
Yeah, great stuff.
That's it for this week's episode of A Story Club, Global Politics and Cultures, brought to you by Bulletproof Podcast Formula. We were talking with our guests, Akim Millington from the United States and Rubadiri Victor from Trinidad and Tobago on culture industry and digital technology, from Rihanna, Megadeth, and Mariah Carey to Trinidad Carnival and beyond. I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for watching and listening. Please join us again next week. And in the meanwhile, like, share, follow, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. And if you're watching on YouTube, please also click the bell icon so you get notifications of when our programs are uploaded. Thanks again, and see you next week.